Welcome, dear listener, to a special program featuring the life of our time's most influential political figure. My name is Cydreck Nyoni. In this program, we will explore the successes, achievements, and controversies of John Zenas Ungapake Tembo. John Tembo, popularly known as JZU, was born on September 14, 1932, a teacher by profession, and of course a son of Nkoma Synod pastor, Reverend Zenas Ungapake Tembo. John Tembo hailed from Senior Chief Kapuka's area in Dedza district and interestingly began his career as a teacher before venturing into the world of politics in the late 50s and early 60s. When Malawi was undergoing significant political changes in the late 50s and early 60s, it was a time when the nation was striving for independence from colonial rule. And John Tembo found himself in the middle of this struggle as a young teacher at Dedza Secondary School. His passion for the betterment of Malawi and its people led him to join the Malawi Congress Party, MCP. Tembo was elected to Nyasaland's Legislative Assembly in 1961, 3 years before the country got independence and became the Republic of Malawi. He was Malawi's first black finance minister after independence, succeeding Sir Henry Phillips. John Tembo's rise in politics was rapid, partly because of his blood relationship with Kamuzu's confidante, Mama Cecilia Kadzamila, and also partly because of his unwavering loyalty to President Hastings Kamuzu Banda. It is also worth noting that John Zenas Ungapake Tembo was an uncle to Cecilia Tamanda Kadzamila, the official hostess and a long-time confidante of President Hastings Kamuzu Banda. Tembo quickly rose to the ranks of Malawi Congress Party and became one of the most prominent and powerful members of the party. Eventually, JZU became one of the very few members of the cabinet who survived the 1964 cabinet crisis. The 1964 cabinet crisis was a period of pandemonium and anarchy that happened just few weeks after Malawi had attained independence in 1964. This was the time when Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda had some political disagreements with his ministers soon after attaining independence. The likes of Henry Masauko Chipembele, Yatuta Chisiza, Kanyama Chiume, Alton Chirwa, Rose Chiwambo, and others were either fired or resigned from the cabinet. However, JZU was among the very few people who remained loyal to Dr. Banda. Former President Bakir Muluzi was one of the active politicians then and explains more on the events leading to the cabinet crisis of 1964.
I do indeed, because of that cabinet crisis that is being called now, a number of ministers were either, dismissed from the cabinet or resigned. I mean, in the name of Masauko Chipembere, Kanyama Chiume in those days, and so many of them. Rose Chiwambo was a minister, deputy minister. So to answer your question, this is a man who has been very loyal, over the years, to the leadership of the Malawi Congress Party until he himself became the president of the Malawi Congress Party some years back. Well, I mean, these are people that actually, risked their lives, during the old days of colonialism, came out to support the change, political change that is, in 1960s. Even beginning from 1959, when Dr. Banda came to Malawi, he was one of those that actually devoted all his life to political life in this country.
John Tembo's dedication and leadership qualities earned the respect of his colleagues and the trust of Dr. Banda. Colleen Zamba, the chief secretary to the president and cabinet, reminded the people about some of the notable achievements that can be attributed to John Tembo, like how he managed to convince Carlsberg Breweries of Denmark to invest in Malawi. Yes, JZU was influential in convincing Carlsberg Breweries to invest in its first facility outside Copenhagen in the early 60s, soon after Malawi got
of Africa. Most of the infrastructure which is governing the tobacco industry, it was Right Honorable JZU who established it. He chaired the Tobacco Control Commission then. He was instrumental in the establishment of the New Building Society, now known as New Building Society Bank, and he served as its chairman. Within Southern Africa context, on behalf of the Malawi government, he played a material role in negotiations for peace in Mozambique that resulted in the Rome-Apisa Accord, which he aided in 1992. He was chair of Blantyre Print press group of companies, which was really contributing heavily to the economy of Malawi.
Other notable achievements of John Tembo politically was his ability not to be a political monger like many other politicians who dumped their mother parties in search of greener pastures or in an effort to remain relevant politically, as alluded by Nicholas Dawes.
Honorable John Tembo was one of the first members of parliament after the election of 1961. He served in many various capacities as the finance minister, Tembo governor, president of the vice president of the Malawi Congress Party, president of MCP, leader of opposition. So he has contributed a lot to the development of the country.
So you, as someone who was close to Kamuzu, how can you describe the relationship between the late JZU Tembo and Kamuzu Banda?
Well, you know what, Kamuzu wanted people who are loyal, hardworking, disciplined, and that's what Tembo was, and that's why Honorable Tembo had a long spell, or was a minister, several governor, because he was very loyal, very obedient, very hardworking, and very innovative.
So how can Malawians remember his life?
Malawians should emulate the example of Honorable Tembo insofar as hardworking, loyalty, innovativeness, and his leadership skills. I think we have to sit down and emulate.
In agreement with Dawes' sentiments on John Tembo's loyalty to Kamuzu is Tulani Mzaza, one of Kamuzu's relatives from Kasungu.
So I would say he was one of the guys who kept the legacy of Kamuzu, not just a guy who was like MCB guy, but somebody who was very, very connected to Kamuzu. So in my perspective, something like the legacy of Kamuzu lived in him, so has lived in the current president. So I would remember Mr. John Tembo because of something like he's one of the inner circles who are safeguarding the legacy of Kamuzu. So in that perspective, I think Malawi owes a great deal of recognition as somebody who was keeping that legacy. So he's an inspiration economically, historically, politically.
John Tembo will also be remembered as one of the strongest and perhaps the most controversial leader of opposition in parliament. He led the powerful opposition in parliament from the years 2004 to 2009. This was the period where for the first time opposition MPs were in majority in the House. This is how Henry Banda, who was the then leader of the House when John Tembo was the leader of opposition, narrates how John Tembo handled himself in the House.
We attribute, the nation of Malawi attributes to Bingu's first term as being highly successful. That success, to some of us, we also attribute it to the role played by the opposition. When you have a very strong opposition, government is always kept in check. Government imakara or always on its toes, and the beneficiary, the Anhadzigu. And Honorable Tembo's positive contribution comes in opposing government vehemently, to the extent that even if nduna panthawiyo timathaudziwa kuti izizi akatitsutsa, izizi zikabwerera, and that is a positive attribute of Honorable John Tembo to oppose government, and the government performed well.
Colin Zamba also concurred with Henry Banda on the role John Tembo played as leader of opposition in providing checks and balances to the then Bingu administration.
One other important role, as we've already heard, was that Right Honorable Cydreck Nyoni was leader of opposition. During his time, he successfully made many contributions, but one outstanding, which some of us touched us so much, was the Affordable Input Program. He was fearless in keeping government accountable in the face of substantive pressure. This is how then the Affordable Inputs Program was able to cover seed and other crops, even then tobacco, in the country.
Despite numerous positive contributions, like any ordinary human being, he also had a flip side, much like a coin. While Tembo performed numerous commendable actions for the nation, there is also a shadow aspect to his story when it comes to his actions. For instance, he was implicated in some of the atrocities that occurred during the one-party era, even though no competent court of justice ever pronounced him guilty of these allegations. Tembo's political legacy made a heavy reputation blow when he was implicated in the assassination of 3 cabinet ministers and an MP on 18th May 1983 in the infamous Mwanza murder. The 4 murdered politicians were Honorable Aaron Gadama, who was the minister responsible for the Central Region; Honorable Dick Matenje, minister without portfolio, who was also MCP's Secretary General; Honorable Tribe Sangala, who was Minister of Health; and Honorable David Chiwanga, who was an MP from Chikwawa East. Over the years, a number of theories have surfaced to explain why the 4 politicians were eliminated under orders from the above. Others argued that the 4 politicians were murdered because they rebelled against the dictatorship and unpopular policies of Dr. Banda. The 4 are allegedly to have strongly condemned Dr. Banda, among other things, proceedings for Mama Cecilia Gazamira's role at the State House as the official hostess and John Tembo's unstoppable rise in various government positions. We should also remind ourselves here again that John Tembo was an uncle to Mama Cecilia Gazamira, the government official hostess who happened to be Kamuzu's confidante. Additionally, some accounts claim that the four vigorously opposed Dr. Banda's plans to change Malawi's constitution to create the position of a prime minister, at which it was obvious that the position was being created for John Tembo to occupy. However, according to the Parliamentary Hansard of March 1983, Honorables Gadama, Matenje, and Chiwanga as MPs openly made biting remarks against financial mismanagement and corruption within government during the budget session of Parliament in March 1983. That particular session of Parliament was presented with a highly critical report from the Public Accounts Committee, PAC, which noted massive overspending by some government departments and irresponsible debts on the part of parastatal companies, some of which were chaired by Honorable John Tembo. Dr. Banda himself also happened to be minister responsible for the four ministries in question, that's Defense, Agriculture and Natural Resources, Justice, and External Affairs portfolios. In their submissions during the parliamentary deliberations on PAC report, Honorables Dick Matenje, Aaron Gadama, and David Chiwanga did not miss words to express outrage and displeasure upon the revelation of gross misuse and abuse of public funds in above-mentioned ministries and parastatal corporations like Press Corporation, and lack of oversight by respective controlling officers. It has therefore been argued by others that this would have probably been viewed as a direct confrontation by the three against Dr. Banda, the minister responsible for the four ministerial portfolios in question, and Honorable John Tembo as the chair of some of the parastatal organizations blacklisted in the report. This particular tenure of parliament was also coming to an end, and the next one-party parliamentary elections were to be held the following month from 29 to 30 June 1983. The parliament was dissolved at the end of that special session held on 17th May 1983, after which there was to be a presentation of nomination certificates to parliamentary candidates at Kwacha Conference Center in Blantyre. This is where MBC TV Kwacha studios are now located. Actually, Honorable Dick Matenje himself, as Secretary General of Malawi Congress Party, was scheduled to chair this event. According to the details provided by Dr. John Luwanda in his book titled Kamuzu Banda of Malawi, A Struggle in Promise and Power and Paralysis of 1993, the four ministers were arrested on 17th May 1983 along Zomba Blantyre Road. Then they were taken to the Eastern Region Police Headquarters in Zomba and spent a night at Mikuyu Prison. They were transferred to Blantyre the following day, where they were first brought to MCP sub-head office at Chichiri near the Independence Arch in Blantyre, and later on to the special branch office in Limbi. During that night, reports have it that they were hooded, handcuffed, and driven to Mwanza Tambani Back Road, which leads south from Mwanza district along the Malawi-Mozambique border, where they were hammered and butchered to death and finally dumped in a blue Peugeot saloon registration number BF5343, disguised as if they had perished during a car accident while fleeing the country into Mozambique. This incident was satirically narrated by President Baki Muluzi during campaign period prior to the 2004 general elections.
Anakala ku prison miezi 9 ali parimandi. Mulandu opa agadama. Mulandu opa amatenje. Atwai kusangala. Achiwanga. Kupakwa cheso tumwankanza. Ini mguzio agadama anali Mkristu wa Chikatolika. Akwa koma Somali pa mutu anagwira corona yache. Atembo mkundiperaji. Mkundiperaji pa chifuwa chani. Wandu follow ntawi imodzi. Kwa unjika ngali moto ndukata ye kumwanza ati gali moto achitenga tiya chitangozi.
In January 1995, under Bagie Muluzi's new government, Dr. Banda and his close associates like Honorable John Tembo, Mama Cecilia Gadzamila, and 3 former police officers were formally charged in the High Court of Malawi with murder and conspiracy to murder the 4 politicians. On 23 December 1995, the jury found each of the respondents not guilty. Finally, on 31st July 1997, the Supreme Court dismissed all the 4 grounds of appeal by the state. Although John Tembo and other accused defendants of the Mwanza murder case were found not guilty and that they were acquitted by the Supreme Court of Appeal, the whole fiasco left an indelible legacy of John Tembo, as it often overshadowed the positive contributions that JZU did to the nation. Mwanza murder case is just one of the many cases where some of his critics thought John Tembo had a hand in the atrocities that happened in the one-party rule of Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda that lasted for 3 decades. During the referendum in the early 90s, Tembo and other MCP cadres vehemently opposed the reintroduction of multi-party democracy and labeled it as multi-party Ndinkondo, literally meaning multi-party can bring anarchy in the country. This is part of what John Tembo said during campaign period prior to the 1994 general elections in Intaja, Machinga, where JZU accused the likes of Bagiri Muluzi and other pro-democracy activists, accusing them of not being loyal to Kamuzu because of their stance in demanding multi-party democracy.
Ndipo chimene chimatimvetsa chisoni Angwazi anabantu amene tsala ku Malawi Congress Party headquarters.
In 1993,
chifukwa anthu amene akukira zimenezi ndi anthu amene anali mipando mnapatsa mipando ku Malawi Congress Party headquarters. Anthu amene watagwira nawo ntchito Muluzi, Bwanali, Chakakala Chaziya, Munyenyembe, Aleke Banda, Sembereka, Eda Chitalo.
JZU even chaired a meeting at MCP's headquarters soon after the release of the famous pastoral letter by the Catholic bishops, where they plotted to kill the Catholic bishops who were authors and signatories of the pastoral letter. In 1994, MCP was booted out of government and the MCP found itself in the opposition. Tembo repositioned himself in the new multi-party dispensation and he became MCP's vice president with Gwanda Chakwamba as its leader after the retirement in active politics of Dr. Hastings Kamuzu Banda. Relationship between John Tembo and Gwanda Chakwamba soured after the death of Kamuzu Banda and eventually power struggle erupted between the two heavyweights. Tembo eventually defeated Gwanda Chakwamba as MCP president in the early 2000s, and Gwanda Chakwamba left MCP and formed his own party called the Republican Party. Tembo unsuccessfully contested for presidency in the 2004 and 2009 general elections, where he lost to President Bingu wa Mutharika in both occasions. JZU retired from active politics in 2013, paving the way to Lazarus Chakwera to lead the old Grand Party, that's the Malawi Congress Party, MCP. At the convention held in August 2013, delegates overwhelmingly opposed through a voice vote changing MCP's constitution to allow John Tembo to stand for a third term as MCP president. Lazarus Chakwera was then elected to succeed John Tembo on 10th August 2013. Handing over the party leadership to Chakwera on 11th August, Tembo urged party members to unite behind his successor, saying Chakwera is the only hope of MCP and Malawi in general. After a parliamentary career dating back more than 50 years, Tembo confirmed on 22nd September 2013 that he would not stand for re-election as MP for the South constituency in the 2014 parliamentary elections. John Senasungapake Tembo was married to Ruth Tembo, who was originally from the Kingdom of Lesotho. Ruth Tembo died in 2015. John Tembo was the father of Chimwemwe, Dudu, John Tembo Jr., Tabo Temba, and Dalitso. John Tembo died of pneumonia and other old age-related illnesses on 27 September 2023 at the age of 91. May his legacy continue to inspire us all to strive for better Malawi, just as he did throughout his remarkable life. This also brings us to the end of today's special program, where we were looking into the life, achievement, and controversies of Malawi's longest-serving parliamentarian, a veteran politician, the first black Minister of Finance in post-independence Malawi, Right Honorable John Zenas Ungapage Tembo. My name is Cydreck Nyoni.